And along the way, I had to sign my name in the black book. I had to sell my soul to the devil. I didn't know the devil already had my soul, but, you know, I made a pact. And the pact was that for 7 years, I would serve Satan faithfully, that he would have me body, soul, and spirit. He would give me anything I requested: wine, women, song, drugs, power, whatever I wanted I could have. In exchange for that, at the end of 7 years, he'd get to kill me and take me to hell. What a deal. How many of you want to sign up? You got to realize, Satanists are taught that there's this kind of, I don't know if you've heard of the philosopher Nietzsche, but Nietzsche taught that Christians were like slave mentality, and that the true masters were the Ubermen, the supermen. And so the idea was that Christians were all losers. They would go to heaven, which is boring because you sit around all day and twang on a harp while sitting on a cloud and saying, oh, you're so great, oh, you're so wonderful, you know, and it's boring. That's what we were told. Whereas if you go to hell, it's like sex, drugs, rock and roll, day and night for all eternity. You get to party hardy for all eternity. And so the masters go to hell. The slaves go to heaven. The wolves go to hell. The sheep go to heaven. That's the way we looked at it. Anyway, I got more and more into these things, very, very strange stuff going on. At one point, I'd gone through different levels of initiation in ceremonial magic, and I'd done some very powerful rituals. And I had this experience. I had happened to go home to visit, because this time we were living in Milwaukee. And I had gone home to visit my folks who lived in a little farm town in Iowa. And I was staying in my old bedroom. And for some reason, Sharon hadn't come with me. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was lifted out of my bed, carried through the roof of my bedroom, and I was sailing through the sky, through the stars, to the moons of Saturn. Now, that's pretty weird. And mind you, I was not on any drugs at this point. No funny cigarettes or recreational vegetables whatsoever. And I ended up landing on this moon of Saturn. And there was this obscenely bizarre-looking temple there. It was all totally black, totally out of whack. The angles were all wrong, spikes sticking out of it. It looked like a loathsome, diseased kind of black thing crouching on the plains of this moon. And I was told to go in, and I went inside, and there was this gentleman there who was my occult mentor, and he was wearing a white robe, and he kind of glowed in the dark like Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars movies, you know. Well, anyhow, he says, welcome to the Cathedral of Pain. Now, somehow that didn't sound very good to me, but what could I do? I was out in the middle of outer space, you know. And so I walk into this thing, and it's an enormous thing like a cathedral, just huge. Except instead of stained glass windows along the walls, there was these, like, imagine like giant aquariums, floor-to-ceiling aquariums, full of some kind of fluid in this green light bathing them. And except instead of pictures or whatever, floating in these two aquariums on both sides of the room were countless naked dead bodies, mutilated, horrible looking, you know, just floating there, including dead babies, dead children, dead adults, the whole bit. And I was just getting horrible feelings about this. There was this altar which was shaped like a trapezoid made out of girders in the middle of the room, and there was this huge throne made out of steel girders in the far side of this cathedral, kind of like if you were in like a Anglican or Catholic church, you know, in the rear. Well, what happened was, I was told to lay down on this altar, and they tied me to this altar. And this is all happening in this dream. Was it a dream? I don't know. What happens? All these people come out in black robes, and they start chanting. And for some reason, they're chanting in French. And for some reason, I understand French, even though I don't. And they're saying all these blasphemous things against the Almighty, which I won't even repeat, just cursing over and over again. And it's like they're trying to raise a level of power. And all of a sudden, this figure materializes on this throne in the rear of this huge cathedral. And it's this giant, ghastly figure, probably 25, 30 feet high. And it's like scintillating back and forth between this gorgeous-looking man with long, flowing hair to becoming like a winged bull, to becoming like a goat with wings, and a human body. And it would go back and forth, like scintillating. So at the end, this thing gets up off the throne, and the chanting is getting more and more fierce and more frenzied. And he comes down, and every time he steps, the whole floor shakes. And he comes up to where I'm laying on this altar, and he has this vast hand that's like, 4 feet long, from thumb to finger, and talons. And he takes this finger and he pokes it right through my forehead, like this talon, and it like sears into my brain, and I feel this like, energy just burning my brain with white hot pain. And he said in this cavernous, sepulchral Darth Vader type voice, "Now you belong to me, body, soul, and spirit forever." And my brain like exploded at that point, and I felt myself hurtling back to earth in a fireball. And I landed in the backyard of my parents' house. I'm laying there stark naked in the middle of this burning circle of fire on the lawn. And I had a scar on my forehead, which is still faintly visible to this day, 20 years later. And it was like, whoa, what happened here? And I kind of staggered back into the house. I had the mother of all headaches, and I didn't know what to make of it. As I said, I was into this vampire thing. I was getting, vampirism, let me tell you, there's a reason why Yahweh God tells us do not drink blood. He said that to Noah, he said that to Moses, and it's even in the book of Acts in chapter 15. Because blood is the ultimate addiction. Because the blood is the life. And I had to keep drinking more of it, and more of it, and more of it. And I was saying Mass every day, and it got to the point where like 3 or 4 times a week, I had to have one of the women in my coven let me bite them in the neck. And once I got so carried away with bloodlust, I took too much, and I had the girl pass out on me, which was pretty scary. Fortunately, my wife has a lot of nursing training, and she was able to tell nothing was seriously wrong. She just sort of had an attack of pernicious anemia. But at the time, the only job I had, because, what do you do when you can't go out in the daytime? I was working as a boxman for the Milwaukee Sentinel, which meant I drove around in the middle of the night and put the newspapers in boxes for the morning newspaper. And I drive, you're driving through the streets of Milwaukee at 2 in the morning, who do you see? Mainly prostitutes and the occasional homeless person. And I was white-knuckling it on the steering wheel. I was so trying to fight off the urge, just jump out of my truck, pounce on one of these hookers, and just rip her throat out. It was getting that bad. And I was just, what am I supposed to do here? What am I supposed to do? And the funny thing is along the way, I asked for help. And I was asking for it from the devil. But the funny thing is sometimes Yahweh will come along when you're praying to the wrong deity, and he'll say, "Excuse me, I'll take this call." And that's just what he did. He answered that prayer. Because what happened is that all of a sudden, I got a check back. Every year I was sending a check to the Church of Satan, my dues. And I got it back from the bank, and some lady from the San Francisco bank, where the Church of Satan does its banking, had written on it, "I'll be praying for you in the name of Jesus." And I just thought that was so inane, because at this point I was so deceived. I thought Jesus was the son of Satan. He'd been killed on the cross as a sacrifice to the evil god Jehovah to save mankind from enslavement. That's how 180 degrees off I was. So I just laughed and, forgot about it. Well, the funny thing was, within a couple days, something hit me like a Mack truck. I lost all my magical power. I got sick as a dog. I lost all my vampiric power. It was like I was flat on my face. I felt like I was hitting bottom big time. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, And so I kept saying, "Lucifer, you promised me that if I did all these things for you, I would have all this power, all of this wealth, women, whatever, And here I am basically ruined. Because that's what he is. He's a welcher. The devil will promise you anything and then deliver virtually nothing. And the funny thing is who should come up from from Chicago to visit us in Milwaukee? A couple of teenage satanic groupies who wanted to meet the great Magister Templi, that was me, who at that time I was so sick as a dog I could barely sit in my chair and look impressive. And so they came in and they said, we brought you these Christian comic books because they're so funny. There's one book called Spellbound and one book called Angel of Light, and they're about the occult, and they're so stupid, you know. And they'd even written obscene things in them and like made black the teeth out on the characters in the book and stuff. So anyway, I just glanced at them, couldn't be bothered. The interesting thing is in all those years, we lived 10 years in Milwaukee, no Christian ever came and witnessed to us. Not even a Jehovah's Witness came and witnessed to us. Not even the Mormons came to visit us. We lived in the same place in the heart of downtown Milwaukee. Never. So that's what Yahweh had to do. He had to have Satanists bring me the gospel. Because at that time, still to this day, in the back of those comic books was how to get born again. But I couldn't be bothered. I had too much ego. You know, they say it's the hardest thing of all is for someone who's prideful to get saved. And I was full of pride.